Thoren's pickaxe struck the stone wall of the mine with a resonating thud. His breath misted in the chilly air as he heaved, muscles straining. Each swing was a rhythmic dance, a testament to the years he had spent delving into the earth's belly. In the city of Stone's Rest, his world was a symphony of darkness and echoes, punctuated only by the occasional glint of an ore vein or the distant chatter of his fellow miners. "Thoren, you're swinging too hard," grumbled Brond, an older miner with a beard as grey and rough as the rocks they mined. "Remember, it's not about the strength, it's about the rhythm." Thoren paused, wiping the sweat from his brow with the back of his dirt-streaked hand. He nodded, his eyes softening with respect for the older man. "I'll keep that in mind, Brond." As he returned to mining, he adjusted his technique, the movements becoming less about force and more about precision. His pickaxe connected with a peculiar stone, different from the rest. It was smooth and warm, pulsating lightly under his touch. Intrigued, he gently pried it from the earth, cradling it in his hands. It was oddly light, and it glowed faintly, a soft luminescence that seemed to breathe in time with his own heartbeat. "Thoren, what's that you've got there?" Brond squinted in the dim light, curiosity lining his weathered face. "I am not sure," Thoren replied, turning the stone over in his hands. "Never seen anything like it before." "As long as it's not a gas pocket," Brond chuckled. "Don't want you blowing us all to the heavens." Thoren laughed, a warm sound that echoed off the cavernous walls. "I'll be sure to handle it with care." Brond clapped him on the back, and they returned to their work, the mysterious stone now tucked securely in Thoren's bag. The rest of the day passed uneventfully, the rhythmic chipping of pickaxes against stone a comforting, familiar soundtrack. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Thoren made his way home, the stone's gentle pulse a silent companion. His dwelling was a humble one, nestled at the city's edge, where the stone structures gave way to the untamed wilderness. Inside, it was warm and comforting, filled with rustic charm and the scent of dried herbs hanging from the rafters. Setting his bag down, Thoren carefully took the stone out, placing it on the wooden table. In the quiet of his home, away from the dust and noise of the mine, he could truly appreciate its oddity. It was unlike any gem or mineral he'd seen, its glow more pronounced now, as if it was responding to the tranquility. He reached out, fingertips barely brushing the surface, and the stone cracked. Thoren jerked back, surprise etched on his features. The crack spread, a network of lines webbing across the surface, light spilling out from within. With a soft sound like a sigh, the stone split open. From the ruins of the stone, a creature emerged, small and delicate. Its scales shimmered, reflecting the dying light of the day that filtered through the window. Wings folded against its body, it was a creature of legend, a dragon, nestled in the palm of his hand. Thoren could only stare, breath caught in his throat. He reached out hesitantly, fingers shaking, and the dragon leaned into his touch, a soft, cooing sound resonating from it. It was then he heard it, a whisper in his mind, soft and curious. "Friend?" Thoren gasped, pulling his hand back. The dragon chirped, tilting its head inquisitively. Thoren reached out again, fear replaced by fascination. As his fingers brushed against the dragon's scales, the whisper returned. "Friend?" "Yes." Thoren found himself whispering aloud, a gentle smile curving his lips. "Friend." And so, in the humble dwelling of a humble miner, a friendship was born, one that would change the fate of Stone's Rest and all of Elder Vanes. But for now, it was just Thoren and the dragon, the world outside oblivious to the miracle within. In the days that followed, Thoren found his life irrevocably changed. His days still consisted of the rhythmic swings of his pickaxe, the earthy scent of the mine and the camaraderie of his fellow miners. But his nights were transformed. They were filled with the comforting warmth of the dragon hatchling, who he had begun to call Ember for her warm, glowing scales, and the whispers of a time long past. Thoren had quickly learned that Ember's whispers were not just sounds. They were memories, ancestral memories passed down from generation to generation, from the time when dragons were as common as the birds in the sky. Each night, Thoren would sit by the crackling fireplace and listen to the whispers of the past. He saw dragons soaring through the sky, their scales shimmering in the sunlight. He saw them coexisting with humans, helping them build grand cities and create powerful artifacts. He saw the harmony that existed, the understanding and respect between the two races. But he also saw the betrayal, the war, and the downfall of the dragons. He saw their majestic figures shot down from the sky, their bodies used to create weapons of war, and their kind driven to extinction. Or at least, so he had thought. Ember's memories were a window into the past, a forgotten past that revealed the true history of elder veins. And with each passing day, Thoren found himself drawn deeper into the intricate tapestry of the dragon's memories. On one such evening, as Ember's whispers painted images of dragons dancing with the northern lights, a soft knock echoed through the quiet dwelling. Thoren gently shifted Ember, hiding her under his thick miner's coat, and went to answer the door. Bronn stood there, his usually cheerful face etched with worry. "Thoren, there's talk in town. Talk of the Lord increasing the mining quota once again." Thoren frowned, concern creasing his brow. "He can't do that, can he? We're already mining at our limit." Bronn shrugged, a hint of bitterness in his eyes. "Since when has the Lord cared about what he can or can't do?" A moment of silence passed between them, the weight of their worries hanging heavy in the air. Then Bronn glanced at Thoren, a strange look in his eyes. "Thoren, that stone you found, did you find anything else unusual in the mine?" Thoren hesitated, Ember's warm presence a reassuring presence under his coat. He forced a casual shrug, meeting Bronn's gaze. "No, it was just a strange stone. Nothing more." Bronn nodded, seemingly satisfied with his answer. "Good. Strange things have a way of bringing trouble, and we've got enough trouble as it is." With those cryptic words, Bronn bid him good night, leaving Thoren alone with his thoughts and Ember's whispers. He returned to the fireplace, pulling Ember out from under his coat. Her scales glowed, casting dancing shadows across the room. As Ember resumed her whispers, Thoren was no longer just a passive listener. He felt a responsibility, a need to protect Ember and the history she held. He didn't know what the future held, didn't know the role Ember was to play in it. But as he watched the dragon hatchling sleep, her whispers fading into the quiet crackling of the fire, he knew one thing for certain. He would protect Ember and the past she carried no matter what. In the heart of Stone's Rest, where the cobblestone streets buzzed with activity and the stone buildings stood tall and proud, a rumour began to spread. It was a whisper at first, a hushed word exchanged between haggling merchants, a nervous glance shared between miners. A secretive note passed among the city guards. The rumour spoke of a dragon, the last of its kind, hidden within the city. Thoren heard the whispers, the unease that rippled through the city. He kept Ember hidden, only letting her out in the dead of night when the world was asleep. Each day was a dance with danger, a constant fear that someone would discover Ember's existence. As Thoren returned from the mines, he found a man waiting for him. He was tall, with a mane of golden hair and a scar that ran down his left eye. He introduced himself as Sir Gareth, a knight who had lost his honour and his title. "I heard a rumour," Sir Gareth began, his voice low. "A rumour about a dragon. I didn't believe it at first, but then I remembered the stories my grandmother used to tell me about dragon whisperers who could communicate with dragons. Thoren studied the knight, his gaze lingering on the sincere look in his eyes. He made a decision then, a risky one, but necessary. He revealed Ember to Sir Gareth. The knight's eyes widened in awe as he watched the dragon. In the days that followed, Sir Gareth was not the only visitor Thoren had. A woman named Elara, a sorceress who had been banished from her coven for her radical ideas, heard the whispers and sought them out. And then there was Rael, a rebel leader who had been fighting against the Lord's tyranny. "There is power in unity," Rael said one day as they sat in Thoren's cottage, Ember playing with a small flame in the hearth. "With a knight, a sorceress, a rebel, a miner and a dragon, we could stand against the Lord." Thoren looked at them, at this unlikely alliance that had formed. They were all different, each with their own past and motivations. But they were united by a common cause, a desire to protect Ember and the history she held. "Then we stand together," Thoren decided, his voice steady. And so they began to plan, to prepare for the storm that was brewing. Thoren didn't know if they would succeed, if they could protect Ember from the Lord. But as he looked at his unlikely allies, he felt a glimmer of hope. They were the knight, the sorceress, the rebel, the miner and the dragon against the world. And they were ready to fight. The days turned into weeks, their hours filled with hushed plans, rigorous training and the constant worry of discovery. Thoren continued to work in the mines, his body battered, but his spirit undeterred. Each swing of his pickaxe was now a silent vow to protect Ember and his city. Sir Gareth took the lead in their physical training, his knightly prowess a valuable asset. He sparred with Thoren, teaching him how to defend himself and Ember if the need arose. Elara, with her vast knowledge of the arcane, created wards and protective spells, their glow a comforting presence in the background. Rael, with his network of rebels, kept them informed about the Lord's movements. His people were their eyes and ears, blending into the city's crowd, unnoticed but ever watchful. Thoren found himself admiring the rebel leader, his dedication to his cause unwavering. Ember, no longer the small, delicate creature she had been when she hatched, was growing. Her scales were harder, her wings stronger, and her flame brighter. Yet she was still a child, her playfulness a stark contrast to the gravity of their situation. On one evening, as Thoren sat with Ember, her whispers painting images of grand battles between dragons and knights, Rael burst into the cottage, his face grim. "Only the Lord knows," he said, his voice tense. "He's preparing to storm the cottage." A wave of dread washed over Thoren. He looked at Ember, her eyes reflecting the dancing flames of the fireplace. They had known this day would come, but knowing did not make the reality any less terrifying. "Then it's time," Sir Gareth said, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. Elara nodded, her hands alight with magical energy. Time to protect what matters. They moved into action, their plans unfolding. Sir Gareth and Rael left to rally their forces, leaving Thoren and Elara to protect the cottage. As the sun gave way to the moon, the quiet of the night was broken by the sound of approaching hooves. Thoren hugged Ember, whispering words of comfort, of promises he hoped he could keep. The Lord's men stormed the cottage, their swords gleaming in the moonlight, but they were met by a force they had not expected. Sir Gareth, leading a group of miners, charged at them, their pickaxes a poor match for swords, but their courage unwavering. Elara's magic danced in the air, a symphony of light that pushed the attackers back. And then there was Ember. She spread her wings, taking to the skies, her roars echoing through the night. Fear rippled through the Lord's men at the sight of a dragon, a creature they had believed to be extinct. The battle was fierce, the outcome uncertain, but as Thoren watched his friends fight, Ember soaring above, he knew one thing. They would not go down without a fight. They would protect Ember, protect their city, or die trying. The night was ablaze with the fury of battle. Sir Gareth, once a knight of honour, fought with a fierceness that belied his exile. His sword clashed against the enemies, sparks flying with each strike. Elara's magic danced in the night, the ethereal light of her spells a stark contrast to the grim reality of their plight. And Rael, the rebel, rallied his people, their cries echoing in the night. The Lord's men were many, their numbers like a sea of darkness washing over them. And yet they fought, for their city, for Ember, for a past they were only beginning to understand. In the midst of the chaos, Elara made a discovery. The Lord's power, the unnaturally strong force that fueled his rule, was not his own. It was borrowed, stolen from the very creatures he had driven to extinction. "It's dragon magic," Elara called out, her voice barely audible over the clashing of swords and cries of battle. "He's been using the essence of fallen dragons to enhance his strength." Thoren's blood ran cold. He looked at Ember. She was the last of her kind, the last source of pure dragon magic. The implications of Elara's discovery were clear, and they were terrifying. Ember, she needs to return to her stone form. The dragon magic will abandon the Lord and return to its rightful owner. But that would mean... Thoren's voice trailed off, the reality of the situation sinking in. Ember's transformation back to stone would be a one-way journey. She would be gone. "Yes," Elara confirmed, her voice heavy with regret, "but it's the only way." Thoren was torn. He looked at Ember, at his friend, and felt a swell of protest rise within him. They couldn't ask this of her. They couldn't sacrifice her for their cause. "No," he declared, his voice resolute. "There has to be another way." But as he looked at Ember, he saw understanding in her eyes. She had been listening, comprehending the gravity of the situation, and she had made her choice. "Friend," Ember's whisper echoed in his mind. It was softer than before, a gentle ripple in a turbulent sea. "It is my choice. I am the last dragon. This is my legacy." With a heavy heart, Thoren nodded. He watched as Ember began to glow, her light growing brighter with each passing moment. It was blinding, forcing him to avert his eyes. When he finally dared to look, Ember was gone. In her place was a stone, identical to the one he had found in the mine. The impact was immediate. The Lord's men staggered back as if struck, their strength waning. Without their leader's power to fuel them, they were just ordinary men, their intimidating facade shattered. In the end, the battle was won, but the victory was a hollow one. They had protected their city, saved their people, but at what cost? Ember was gone. Her loss, a gaping wound in their hearts. As the sun rose, casting long shadows on the battlefield, Thoren picked up the stone. He held it close, a tangible reminder of Ember, of their friendship, of the history they had shared. "I promise," he whispered to the stone. "I promise to remember you, Ember. I promise to remember our history. Your sacrifice will not be in vain." In the aftermath of the battle, Thoren, Sir Gareth, Elara and Rael stood together. They were weary, their bodies battered and bruised, but their spirits were unbroken. They had lost a friend, but they had gained something far more significant. They had uncovered the true history of their city, of their people. They had learned of the dragons, of their legacy, of their downfall. Ember was gone, but she would not be forgotten. Her whispers would live on, a reminder of the past, a guide for the future. They would remember, they would honor her memory, and they would fight. For their city, for their people, for their history, for Ember. The sun was high in the sky when they finally parted ways, each carrying a piece of Ember's stone, a piece of her legacy. They had a city to rebuild, a people to lead, and a history to rewrite. It was a daunting task, but they were ready. They were the knight, the sorceress, the rebel, and the miner. They had fought with a dragon by their side, and they had emerged victorious.
Thank you very much for listening. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this story. Subscribe if you loved it.